just going to suggest we start by Julian giving a quite a summary of what's been happening over the past few weeks, those bits that he can disclose, of course, and likewise Justin, because we've been talking about season ticket refunds and that over the weekend. So just so that everybody hears it from the horse's mouths, so to speak, without being disrespectful, rather than on social media and through rumor. If that sounds reasonable to everybody.
Yeah.
Agree. So, Julian, do you want to kick us off with just a kind of the adventure that you've been on for the last few weeks?
Yeah. I get the joy of I'm the second rep for the league, like the reserve rep, and right at the very beginning, John Nixon. I think people ought to press their mute buttons, Gilly, if they're not, because otherwise you get lots of feedback. We did this afternoon, so if everybody can put themselves on mute, you can see the little box. So it's right at the bottom. As soon as you put yourself on mute, then it sort of clears everything. That's it. Yeah, great. Phil's still not there. Look, that's you. Phil's got it. That's all I can see though. So, yeah, and John was floating around off of Australia. So I had a couple of weeks of really intense speaking to an awful lot of clubs, which is sort of quite useful. But you can imagine there was actually, the truth is there was panic in some quarters. I think it really underlines where we are when I was able to, whilst I don't think we're panicking, but there's a serious amount of concern. But when I was in contact with these people and seeing what sort of state that some of the clubs are in, then sort of makes you thankful you're a trust club and that, they've been very careful with our money. And as I've always said pretty much in every interview, is that, there's plenty of us still around that remember, what it was like back in 2003, 2005, and laterally actually even 2013, 14, because it's taken us a long time to get here. It hasn't happened overnight. This is 15 or 20 years of work in all the different areas to make the club as strong as it is today. So to see some people in a worse situation new was quite nice in one way. Not for them, but there's a few clubs that are already struggling. I'm very, very surprised that at this point we haven't already lost some clubs, and I know there's talk of it. And I think somebody went into the press over the weekend saying he thinks there's going to be 3 or 4 clubs that are gone before the beginning of next season. I can't quite see that, but I can see 2 or 3 that are in trouble before this even hit. And there's some, Macclesfield as an example, you all have heard about, that hadn't paid the wages in March and haven't paid them since, of course. So there may be some fallout. I think with John returning, I got left with 12 clubs, so I get to speak to them on quite a regular basis, because I don't mean it in a nasty way, because we all are, but they're all very needy. Everybody wants to know a definitive answer, and they want it now. They want a plan. They want to get on with what they're doing. They've got contracts. They're trying to work out budgets, and I have a little standing joke with our board that there's so many communications coming through on a constant basis that I've sort of wallpapered most of the house and the landing and the shed and so on, because there's just so much communication. And the reason there's so much communication is because things are changing constantly all the time. So, and the one thing that's not changing is the fact that there's no definitive point. Of course, we're working towards that. There's still no definitive, and there's still some grey areas, and you've only got to switch on the TV to see how many. So sort of bringing you a little bit, sort of right up to date, really, and you're getting some information. We've got 3 or 4 of the board here anyway, but bringing you right up to date. Last week it looked very much like, and I suppose the important thing to explain is that nothing can actually work unless all the 4 leagues, and to a degree some kind of unison with the leagues below that, even because of the FA's involvement. They're involved with the whole pyramid, not just the top 4 leagues. So unless those 4 leagues, this was the parameters, unless those 4 leagues could decide on how they were going to promote and relegate right the way down through, then nothing could happen. So it only needed, the league, the championship, or the League 1 clubs, or even the League 2 to say no, and then the whole thing falls apart. So the Football League Executive Board, Rick Parry's the chair, and he's not the most sort of friendly, warm guy, but actually I have to say that I think he's done with the number of variables which are huge. You have people with different amounts of money in different leagues, in relegation situation, in promotion, in near bankruptcy, some with tons of money. I think they've done an absolutely magnificent job keeping it together. And from my position, where I see 12 people and probably 4 or 5 different opinions within that 12, so they have done a really good job so far. Nobody will be satisfied, but I still think it's a decent job. And what they've tried to do is get all those 4 leagues lined up. They've had considerable difficulty with the PFA, and actually Gary Neville is on the calls because, of course, he's the Salford boss and owner, and he made a suggestion that 6 of the players' captains should get together and should speak to the Football League and the PFA. And it's very interesting to see that some of the players want something different than their union, the PFA want, and that's probably one of the points that's still trying to be settled now. Where there's players that are desperate and want to play and see the risk as minimal and want to do it, and there's still some that don't want to. So going back again slightly, is the object of the exercise was to get all 4 leagues in unison, or not necessarily doing the same thing, but doing something that did facilitate promotion and relegation. And we've seen what's happening with the Premier League. And of course, the bottom of the Premier League, the relegation ones, don't want it to continue. There's a surprise. The Championship have decided that they're going to try and play out the 8 or 9 games because the costs are huge. And of course, they can afford those costs, or it's something they want to do. Up until the beginning of last week, it looked like everything was pretty much in line. Everybody knows where we are, that should the pyramid be satisfied in terms of promotion and relegation, that League 2 would then go into a situation whereby we would have playoffs rather than it be decided on a points per game. Then right at the beginning of last week, there was a sort of inclination, and all of a sudden there was 5 or 6, which was well documented. It's nothing you don't know. Suddenly the 6 of the league clubs came out and said, no, we don't want to have promotion relegation. That's probably for 2 reasons. One, there'll be some in the area of the playoffs that think they can get automatic, and there'll be some outside the playoffs that think they can get into the playoff situation. So that's why there was such, and there's some big names in there, the Sunderlands, the Ipswiches, and so on. There's some big clubs with lots of money. So that sort of tipped it up a little bit for our meeting last Friday. I think the Football League, after their meeting on Wednesday, thought they were going to settle it then. It didn't, because of the League One, which again emphasises the importance of having everybody in unison. There's Dennis now. So it is important of having everybody in unison. And I think now from the vibes that I get, that maybe those 6 league clubs are getting close to. Hang on one second, you're going to enjoy this. Hi Dennis, I'm on a call to the Grecian groups at the moment, so can I give you a call back as soon as I'm finished? Okay, great, thanks Dennis. So hopefully there's another, as there is every Wednesday, there's another Football League meeting, and there's meetings going over the whole of the weekend and right the way through to try and get to the point where that element is satisfied. And hopefully on Wednesday or Thursday we shall find out that that League One have decided to do exactly the same as we've decided to do in League Two. So obviously now with the management, Justin and myself have been involved with Matt to try and work out how we go about quite an extensive list of an organisation for bringing players back in. I have to say that the board is going to have an interesting meeting, because it's just sort of dawning on us as well. We want to be in those playoffs. Of course we do. That's the whole purpose of the club, and I'm sure that's what the fans, you'll tell me different, but that's what the fans want. They want to get up a league. That's what we're fighting for every day. But there is going to be, as we all know, there's no supporters, and there's no hospitality, and there's no pies or pasties or hospitality and so on. So it's going to be quite a challenge financially, I think, which is something the board will be addressing. And I think our meeting is on Thursday morning. So that's up and coming. So you've got that in front of them. That's the one thing that's occupying my mind, and I'm sure Justin's mind, and all the people that are on the trust on the financial committees. So that's probably about as, you're more up to date than the board is. Hopefully we're looking at Wednesday. There's not much left of the can. It's been kicked down the road so far now. But as the time goes on, and of course the cut-off time that everybody's concerned about and worried about, is the one that does really focus minds, is the 30th of June, which is when the players' contracts run out. So if it goes on longer, and I know they're already talking about in the Premier League, I'm not sure how they're going to overcome. I haven't heard how they're going to do that, but that's a pretty big challenge to take people into the middle of July, especially when some of those will have contracts for other teams. So the 30th of June is really a really important date that's focusing minds to try and get things finished. So we will, of course, from our own football club's point of view, we'll be looking at the dates. I've already been, I suppose the word is haranguing, but I'm pushing really hard. We need to know dates because, or an idea of date, and I can't even get those at the moment, but my guess would be we'll be returning next week, and they'll need 2 or 3 weeks. I think 3 weeks is probably the minimum in terms of getting the players back to fitness and ready to go. So your guess is as good as mine on the dates when we start training and when we get to always assuming that on Wednesday, League One fall into line, as it were. And there's still some issues at the bottom end where there's relegation from our league because the FA are insistent that they take care of the pyramid. So that has to be taken care of too. And of course, as we know, there's some serious outstanding business with Macclesfield, and they could. The possibility they are even go down, they get their fines, and then they've had too many points and stayed in the league and they haven't paid. So there's still quite a little bit of water to go under the bridge. So I think that probably summarises where we are and where how the national position has affected us as a club. Gilly, you can speak, but you'll have to turn your mic on, mate. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to hear you. Go ahead.
Taggy, in the pyramid, obviously the EFL have to agree the promotion and relegation. Then you come against some kind of ceiling when it comes to the Premiership.
No, we've very beginning we were left off the table, but it became pretty soon in terms of the government, in terms of the Premier League, the FA. Everybody is around the table pretty much every time, so we have good representation. Because they realised the Premiership were hell-bent. That was very obvious from the beginning. And, 1.2 billion does tend to focus your mind, I imagine, on finishing the league. And that meant that relegation, they were insistent on relegation. And that means that meant that the EFL had to be in the middle of it. So that was the reason why we gained some traction right in the very early stages. And this started to become something that began to unfold.
That's fair enough. I was just thinking we can talk about promotion as much as we'd like. You said suddenly end up if the Premier League said, no, you're not taking Leeds and West Brom, for example, then you end up with a championship with 27 clubs or something silly like that. But if it's all a global entity, that's
why the premise right at the beginning, about 2 weeks ago, became that we have to settle this as a whole four, and actually now even plus the FA, they have to be satisfied too. So that's why I say that I think the people running the EFL have done some job in those circumstances. I mean, we're not there yet, and I suppose if it all does come crashing down, which last week I thought, oh Christ, here we go again. It all comes crashing down, and we know where we are come fifth. But I've got a possible. We may not come fifth if you don't count Cheltenham in the calculations, because that means that Cheltenham actually gets calculated twice. So there's an argument statistically to take them out, and if we take them out of the equation and we argue well enough, that puts us in fourth position. So I'm holding that one up my sleeve just in case that does come to fruition. But at the moment, it looks like possible playoffs.
Julian, before we come online, I was reading, and I fell into the trap of looking at Facebook before I came on here, and there were some rumours posting on there, and it was speculation around a salary cap for players, and I don't want to twist you into saying things that you'd rather not. So please say,
No.
can you throw any light on that?
No, quite happy. Yeah. Since Bury last time, and you will have probably been at some of the meetings in the early stages. I know you missed it because of the virus, etc. But right at the very beginning, because of the Bury situation, there was a lot of, and I think you might remember, Nick, I made quite a lot of noise in one of the meetings, doing most of them, but in one of them in particular, and the view was that can't happen again because Bury go up, and you couldn't pay their players, and never mind that somebody else didn't go up, but the people got relegated on the back of that. They were obviously taking the proverbial, and I think there was a lot of people, and I wouldn't say I was incensed, but that's really, really unfair on everybody. The people that are doing it properly, that should not happen. So I suppose I was incensed, and there were a number of others in the same positions. So the League Two at that point, Nick, if you remember, tasked the executive to come up with something that at least held what they call the SCMP, the salary cap management protocol. Got it. That said that if somebody does something wrong, you have to move faster and quicker, so that a number of other teams don't get penalised by it, which is not right. Bury went up, they disappeared, obviously, because for obvious reasons, and there was lots of relegations, lots of people who didn't get into the playoffs, people didn't go up, etc. That can't be right. So there's a real push, and there's a lot of work. There's a small group that was put together some months back to look at the SCMP, and they have just literally coming out with some kind of 2 or 3 different possible scenarios, Nick, which we'll have to look at. And I actually spent some time this afternoon just going through some of those possible. So there's going to be a vote at some point once they put it into some kind of basic structure. There's going to be 2 or 3 options. I think they're making it as ever. The one thing that I've learned over the 20 years is just make it simple. Give them 2. Don't give the Football League 3 or 4 choices, because you end up with 25% across 4 different players. You get nowhere. You just need to go step at a time, one particular solution for one particular thing. And I think they've already looked at 3 or 4 different possible protocols, they call them, and they're not going to get anywhere yet until they narrow those down to maybe 1 or 2 that you can very simply choose to. But there's a lot of people that are very much. I've not taken a front seat in that, because there's been handed over to 3 or 4 people that have got that kind of background and a look at that. But we'll see it very soon, Nick. I have actually got some of that came through probably late last week. You remember we did a tick box thing. Justin and I did a tick box of what you do and what you don't want, which was just about general. So they've taken some of the information from that. So that is coming, and actually the way I look at it, how they're ever going to make it work, I don't know, because there's already people, our friends down the road, are already kicking up. They don't want it. Well, of course they don't want it. They can get 18,000 people through the door, and Simon he doesn't want to throw any more money at it, but 15 million plus whatever else he's put in the meantime. He doesn't want to see a protocol like that holds him back. So whilst there are people like us that want something that says Bury and the like shouldn't go bust, there's people that are saying, hang on a minute, you can't restrict me like that. Why should I be restricted? And I have had that conversation, and I understand if I'd put 15 million in, like Simon has, then probably I'd feel the same way. But we shall see where it takes us, Nick. And but the other thing I think is they've got to try and get to a solution before the end of this season by the AGM, which will be usually in late May, beginning of June.
Is any? So Andy, do you want to take over? I was just going to go around each attendee and see if they had any questions before we move on to Justin.
Sure, I just got one, Nick.
Yeah, go on then, Simon.
With the playoffs by coming up, would that mean that every player would have to be tested, like they're doing in the Premier League? And if so, are the FA looking to help the lower league clubs with the cost of testing, or is that something the club would have to pay themselves?
Hang on 1 second. Let me just. I'm just going to switch over.
I'm just going to switch over to this one so I can see what I'm doing. That's better. Yes, that's one of the issues is going to be the cost. Not only the cost, as you quite right, as you point out, that we're not going to have spectators, etc. But there is a cost to the testing. You're quite right. And the number for the 9 games and the testing was around the 150,000 mark. So it's nothing like that. We're going to play. Well, hopefully we're going to play 3 games. could be 2, but could be 3. And ourselves, I spoke with Robbie and with Kelvin and with Paul again today and yesterday to make representations at this point to say we don't know what the numbers are yet, but we anticipate that whilst we will be not bringing a great deal of money, that's for sure, that we are going to need some help. No, that's all we've done is push that up there to the top to say, look, we need you to think about it. We need you to think about it rapidly because it's not quite right. I mean, the league actually, they want to finish it in this way to save, I don't know how much exactly because that's not been revealed, but it will mean that a significant amount of the money that Sky could claw back won't be clawed back because of those games, and those are the games that are important for them. The games that are important for Sky, the playoff games and the final facility. It wasn't in the call. We had a league, as you know, we had a League 2 call last Friday. It wasn't in the call. It was pointed out.
Am I the only person who can't hear, Julian?
And so you're quite right. And we said it's interpreted. Is it?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, yeah, just you then. Just you then.
It is just me. I've just had a message. Apparently, I'm unstable. Didn't need to be told that. To be frank.
That's the position. So that's another thing. As always in these, there's so much unfolding at the moment. Something happens. You're in the middle of trying to resolve, solve, or get clarity, and until eventually you do get some kind of. So there's and some of it just disappears. Some of it comes to a head, and you have to work out. But that's one that we do need to address. You're quite right. So.
Okay, thank you.
Simon, on that, we received a document last week about returning to training, not about the matches, but just returning to training. And it was a 50-page document that tried to turn Julian and me into scientists all of a sudden, all about the risks. And everyone is proper in fear of the implications from a legal background because, the players' threats. I think it's Troy Deeney today, isn't it, at Watford?
Yeah.
Threatening his position. So there is a hell of a lot of work going on by the EFL in an area that they've never been before. So we're receiving a lot of information. We're trying to digest it, but it's, as you can imagine, it's fairly complex and for the right reasons because it's a high-risk area.
Yeah.
It's a bit unfortunate we're not playing. We didn't turn out that we're playing against Cheltenham because their captain's been one of the ones who's been very vocal about the fact that he doesn't want to play. I don't know. I'm sure there's some very sensible, reasonable reasons behind it, which is but there are players, as Justin points out, and it says though all the way through the bits that I've done, if we carry out the protocol in the proper way, then the risk is I don't know. I'm no medical expert, like Justin says, but I don't think it's non-existent, but it's near as. That's what they're telling me, but we shall see. I'm certainly no expert in that field.
Interestingly, guys, the news has just come through about a few minutes ago that there were 6 positive tests in the Premier League arising from their first round of testing.
In how many in particular club, Gilly, or is it across the board?
I'm not sure whether they're unnamed players or staff. It doesn't really say any more than that. No specific details.
And I think that's the fear all the way through. I have to say that I never thought we'd get to this point. I didn't think it was going to be possible to put 22 people on the pitch and for it to be safe. I'm still not quite sure I'm convinced how that's going to happen. I know they've done it in the Bundesliga, but I never thought we'd get to this point. I'm actually quite surprised. That's why I was spending so much time trying to work out a different kind of formula than anybody's worked out. Help that, i.e. the Cheltenham, the double counting the Cheltenham result. But that's exactly the fear, and we saw it, didn't we, in the German league, the second division team that suddenly had to pull out completely because they had it within the camp. So I think it'd be significant getting that unfold. And if that's 2 or 3 in one team, that will be quite significant. So
the report I read was 700 plus tests. So you imagine every Premier League club, that's all members of staff within each club that are being tested. So it does dilute down a little bit, but as Julian said, it depends where those are and how concentrated that might be in one particular club.
If I carry on around the table, Elaine, have you got any questions? Still on mute. Okay. Gareth, yourself?
No, not really. I asked the guys, some of the committee, etc., have they got any questions, and there wasn't really. I think the note Nick put out the other day about the tickets and the refund, no refund thing was a very positive message, etc. I'm guessing that people are now thinking that there's a video meeting tonight, and it might come out tomorrow. And I'm guessing they're thinking there's going to be some really good positive news, but we're gathering there's not going to be any big positive news.
Yeah, that was certainly my intention when I arranged it, Gareth, because I think Julian's alluded to it. We genuinely thought it would have been resolved last week.
Yeah, I understand that. So I think we have to be a little bit careful if this is going out as a piece available to everybody. We just might need to think about what people will be thinking as a result of it, and not understanding some of the nuances and the detail that obviously you guys are really into. Sure.
Yeah, the bottom line will be the next. It's just phases really, and we thought we knew the answers last week and we didn't. But there's always a football league meeting on Wednesday. That's always an important factor, and then usually on the Thursday and the Friday, although I haven't heard anything at all at this point, there's usually a Championship, a League One and League Two meeting, and Rick Parry has to fit that in between. All the meetings he has with the PFA, with the FA, direct with the government. You saw him on the select committee. I think he's in touch with them probably every 2 or 3 days as well. So that's just for that information, so you can pass that back.
Yeah.
Usually there's the Wednesday thing. Something comes out of that. That's about leakier than the Titanic. That is, you need to find out what's going on there before the meeting's finished, and then they have our meetings probably later in the week. Although sometimes they've drifted over to the week after, but like as you say, we'll have to see.
Richard, have you got anything on your mind?
No, I think what Julian said, I quite understand, so I'm quite happy.
Cool. I've got Phil next on my video screen. So, Phil, anything from yourself in the senior Reds?
Again, no, not really. Just listening to what's being said and taking it in, and appreciating all the work that's being done on behalf of us all for the club.
That Exeter Town picture might take a while, Phil. That might take me a while, but I'll give it a go. I don't know. Was that you who sent that to me? I just saw a thing from the senior Reds today. Who was that from? Was it not from you? There's somebody's put a picture of.
Yeah, Sue found that.
That was Sue, wasn't it? That's right.
Yeah, she does.
It'll take me a while, but I'll reply to you at some point when I get down.
Clive, you're next on my list. Anything from you, sir?
No, I'm all right, thank you.
No,
thank you.
Good. And Chris.
Hi, the only thing I was going to ask, obviously finances were brought up, and I'm aware that it's a bit of a delicate situation, especially if this goes out. We don't want effectively declaring what money we've got in the bank. But obviously, about a year ago, it brought up that we had enough money to keep going till X point in the future without any future player sales. Does that dramatically change now because obviously we've got this area with no money coming in, or how does that work?
Can I pass that? So you, unless Justin's got any questions for Julian, I was going to go to Justin next to do a kind of summary of where he's at from the business perspective rather than from the playing perspective. So maybe Justin could cover that. I think it clearly, if we're missing income from all those games towards the end of the season, it's going to impact quite significantly. But hopefully Justin will be able to put our minds at rest or send us all home with slightly less hair than we had when we started. So Justin, shall I hand over to you and maybe start with Chris's question?
Yeah, of course. No, thanks, Nick. And Chris, in terms of, there's just so many variables in truth at the moment. One of the latest things that we're awaiting is the government's furlough details. So furlough scheme was extended up until the end of October, but the government have said that we've got to look at part funding that. So what does that mean? What can we recover in terms of cost? When might those games start to be played? So there are more spreadsheets from the finance director, Keith Mason, in our inbox than ever, trying to understand those, trying to align those with what actually becomes possible is really, really difficult at this time. So we're, as Julian said, we're in a good place thanks to all the great work from the staff, from the players who have understood the furlough scheme. You know, it's been very complicated for us as a club to understand legislation that's announced and then details sent through later, but we're digesting it, we're acting on it as quickly as we can. You'll notice a lot less players appearing on social media because now that they're on furlough, the EFL advises that, you know, players shouldn't be appearing on social media and doing marketing activity, which is a shame. But you'll notice a slight twist in terms of Scott is now looking through the phone book to find which former players can we tap into from that side. So we don't have any real definitive date. We're in a good place. We're doing a lot of projections, and we're also adjusting the business model, because what happens if crowds don't come in 2 months, you know, leading into the beginning of next season? What do we have to do as a business to change how we behave to ensure that our cost base reflects our income? And there's a hell of a lot of work going on in that area with a subgroup of the board. We'll report back to the main board on Thursday. But I think it's fair to say that the finance director's working harder than ever, producing a lot of information. The EFL are demanding a hell of a lot. And that wage cap that Julian referred to, whilst it's really complicated for the EFL, it could be really significant in changing how lower league football behaves, because some of the wage pressures at some of these clubs, you know, we were due to play Salford City on that Saturday. Salford City paying people £5,000-6,000 a week in our division is quite frightening. You know, it's nowhere near anything we've been at. But when you get those kind of numbers and you get a Plymouth in the division, that really skews the marketplace in terms of players we're signing. So there's a hell of a lot of hope from that wage cap that actually underneath our business model will start to be really changed for the good of the club, and also for the good of lower league football, because all of the chairmen are fed up of putting a vast amount of money in to their clubs, and often can't put the money in because their own businesses have been significantly affected. So I haven't answered your question at all, Chris. I've dodged it completely, but there's a hell of a lot of work going on, and I'm still smiling. So I probably wouldn't be on the call if I wasn't feeling positive about the work that's going on in that space and where we were as a club. So in terms of from a club perspective and from a business perspective, I mentioned furlough there. It's been a massive operation to get players, academy staff, the office staff onto furlough. The only staff that remain off of furlough are the first team manager, the physio, the assistant manager. We've got a couple within the academy, and then we've got marketing manager. So Scott's been producing a lot of video content. He wasn't furloughed, and we felt that as a club that was a really important thing for us to do. And some of the video content he's been putting out there and interviews has been great greatly received by everyone. So I think that was a good choice, and it's helped us massively stay in contact with people, because it was far too easy just to switch a channel off and send everyone away on furlough, which is what some clubs did. They sent every single player and every single member of staff off on furlough and said, see you later, we'll manage as a club. How they manage with all the content that's coming from the EFL, I'm not quite sure. So furlough's been a massive operation. We're really grateful, because those staff that have been on furlough, Andy's in the call, you know, he's one who sat at home, and it's fair to say it's been confusing, I think, for them, because never before have we said to staff, go home and don't work for us, because actually you'll be doing something good for the club. It's a really strange message to have to give to staff. We've been preparing a lot around this year's season ticket campaign for 2021 season. So Scott's been doing a lot of work in there. We've still launched it, and we're really grateful that we've had over 400 people take up that season ticket. It shows what we are as a club, which is fantastic. We've already done the calculations on repayments around the season tickets for the season that we're still to complete. And it was great when I received the email from Elaine suggesting that from a trust angle, they could look to take up the baton around how could we potentially look at people helping the clubs through donating perhaps any refund that they would potentially be due once everything's finalised. At this stage, it is if and when things are finalised, because as Julian said, we're just waiting for everything to fall into place from the EFL. Everything can change, so everything's being prepared for if and when we get that notification finally from the EFL. One thing we are going to do tomorrow is we're going to kick off the process of refunding people the money for the Plymouth away match. That was never our revenue, so it's money that we'll be looking to pay back into people's bank accounts on the cards that they actually purchased the tickets. So I'm surprised that Dennis is phoning Julian, because he should be busy working away on that 24/7. And so, yeah, those people email where possible, we'll pay it back onto the card if it was purchased online or on a credit card in person. Slightly more difficult with those people who have come and paid cash in the shop, but we'll be in contact with them, and we'll try and work through those orders and get the money back to those people. We will offer them the opportunity to donate. That's, you know, because some people have raised that with us, but wherever possible, we'll be looking to resolve that over the next week or so, because there are very few staff left. Dennis is probably the one person who's going to singly handle that. And I think Glitner is one where you have to actually push a button on the system to do it on an order by order basis. So people should expect an email in the next day or so about that, and then the money will follow within the next 7 days following. So Plymouth season tickets. One of the things that I probably underestimated from an operational side was behind closed doors. It sounded like one of those nice scenarios where you think, well, surely match days should be a little bit less stressful. But we had a dial in, myself, the safety officer, and our health and safety advisor probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, and never really anticipated how many complications come with a game behind closed doors. You think an empty stadium should be a doddle, but how do we keep it secure? How do we keep it tight? How do we protect the players? Because, you know, hopefully, as Julian said, we would be the second game of the playoff semi-final, but you know, then we would look to be playing a game in a final wherever that may be in the future. So protecting the players, keeping it safe, keeping it locked down, but also operating, you know, for the sake of media. So it could be a Sky TV game based on what we've received so far from the EFL. So how do we facilitate the trucks and the cabling and all of that side of it, while still socially doing all of the people in the way that we've become accustomed to. So head a little bit spinning on that. I'm sure the EFL will start to issue some protocols, and we will get a few weeks to be able to at least have a run up to that, because the players' training time will allow us that time to prepare, understand, and work out how we deliver a safe game behind closed doors, which, as I say, was somewhat more complicated than I ever anticipated. But yeah, it's pretty strange. I've been in St James's Park normally 2 to 3 days a week. It's pretty strange when you go in there. You know, the The lounges are all set up for the Salford City game. You know, the crockery and the cutlery is all on the table. It's pretty strange there, but the groundsmen are cutting the grass. It's good to see that the whole pitch is covered with green again, because it certainly wasn't in that state when we left it. But yeah, everything's, it's hard to find that balance whereby we make sure that we protect the business, but also make sure that we're ready for when football returns.
Justin, if you're all right, we'll go around the virtual table again. What I'll do, I'll start with Spike. Spike, I'm sorry, I saw you come and I saw you go, but I hadn't realised you'd remained. So, is there any questions that you've got for either Julian or Justin?
No questions, only about the tickets was the big one, and possibly the collection of the flags at some point to get repaired and cleaned.
Yeah, sure. I'll sort that one out for you, Spike. We'll arrange a time when I'm next in St James's Park. I know I'm in Tuesday, so that may be a day I can arrange collection of the flags. It's just liaising with Mike in the club shop, who's been in. He fulfilled all the online shop orders. We did furlough Mike originally, but he came in, cleared the backlog. So I'll get the keys from him and make sure that I can get those flags from him, and I'll let you know by email that you can collect them.
Awesome.
Simon, any questions from yourself?
No questions from me.
Okay, and Andy? No. Elaine?
No, fine, thank you.
No. Gareth?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's unbelievable how much work is going on behind the scenes, and the normal fan would not have a clue. I'm just wondering, is this video going out tomorrow? Was that the plan? Is that still the plan?
I've been asked by the social media guys to forward it on to them. So at the moment, it's recording on my hard drive, and we'll send it out to them. So I guess that would mean that we'll go tomorrow.
I don't know what fans will be looking for, but I'm guessing they'll be thinking there's going to be some positive news and decisions that could have been made, etc. But you know, if the reality is, if they do listen to this and all the little conversations, there's just so many unknowns still, despite loads and loads of work being done behind the scenes by you guys.
And I suppose there's value in people understanding that work's going on. It's really disappointing that there isn't more positive news.
Well, I think there is positivity there, in that a lot of work is going on behind the scenes, and we just need to get to some resolution one day. But it's not in our hands, is it?
Absolutely not. No.
We just need a few more people to switch off their mics, if possible.
Okay.
Richard.
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Nate.
Justin, switch it off.
You're okay. Phil, anything from you, sir?
No, nothing for me. Thank you very much.
And Clive?
No, nothing from me. Thank you.
No. And Chris?
No, nothing from me. Thank you.
Julian, anything you want to ask Justin?
Yeah, why is he only going on Tuesday? What's the matter with the rest of the week? What's happening? No, it's really funny. I don't think, and I know, you know, Justin and I speak once a day, if not twice a day, and it is. You're quite right, Gareth. It's. I don't think I've ever been quite so busy yet, so unproductive. You know, there's nothing happening. There's no games yet. You seem to be, you know, from the meetings and so on. But I actually have to say I agree. I like this format. Saves me travelling around, and it's been nice to be, you know, you seem never to be at home, you know, very rarely. And a meeting like this, we'd be out in the evening, wouldn't we? So, you know, you do a couple of evenings a week, and you know, chase from the cat. So I have to say, perversely, in certain aspects of it, not all of it, I'd rather not be here. I've sort of, you know, sort of got used to this. So things will change. As Justin says, he does point out, you know, we really do have to be on top of our game to work out. We have got, I've been reading about, you know, good to great and the flywheel. We have managed to get it going. It's taken us a long time, and we have got it going. We don't want to lose that momentum now. So, you know, the board have got quite a task to come up with, you know, what's coming next and can we get in front of it. We've done it in so many different places within the trust. I think Clive's here, the junior Grecians. I think the academy's going pretty well. So we really are in a you know, we've got that flywheel running, and that's going to be our big challenge now. Justin's got his finger on it. There's one thing, knowing it, that's the first step, and then working out what the best things to do fastest so that we can get in front, because we need to be. You know, we need to be in front of those people. You know, especially our friends down the road, amongst others. But it is it's a very strange situation to be in, as I know. But it's beginning to take a little bit of shape, and hopefully it won't be too long before we're back at St James's Park.
Andy, I don't normally attend Grecian groups. I probably should, I suppose, but I don't know where you would go from here normally. Do you have a general chat, or do you want to take over from this point? But before you do, can I just thank everybody for coming? I hope you feel it's been a worthwhile evening and worth setting up. I know it's not quite what I was expecting, because I thought we would have a lot more answers than we have. But again, I think it's really useful to demonstrate that, you know, the tremendous work and effort that Justin and Julian are putting in at the moment to keep us going and keep us informed. So thank you to you both. And if I hand over to you, Andy, and for the rest of.
Could I just be a pain, sorry, and just ask a quick question? I don't know who'd be best to answer it. Regarding
it's going to be the best one.
Regarding the Exeter City's kit, obviously it would no longer be Flyby, and we got carpet right for next season. Does that come into effect from the 30th of June? So whenever we get up and running, it could be them on our kits, and we end up in a new kit earlier? How does that work?
Yeah, sure. So it's something we're working on. Carpet right, been brilliant to deal with so far. You know, they're fantastic in their approach to it. They're very understanding. But yeah, we're working to resolve that with them, because there's every likelihood, you know, with China slightly delayed on production because of their impact of closing down for January after the new year and the outbreak starting there. You know, we're trying to understand the timelines of when new kit might arrive, when's the best time to launch that kit, you know, which is really as soon as it lands. So there's a lot of parameters in there. And if necessary, then we would look to get carpet right on the existing shirt, because we want to give them as much exposure as possible. But we do have to look at how do we get it on the shirts, because, you know, which factories are open to manufacture us logos to the standard that we would expect to get them on the shirt. How do we get the Flybees off of the shirt, etc., etc. And also understanding that, you know, we showed, I think, a lot of class in the way that we dealt with Flybe at the end. You know, they were a great partner for a number of years. And I think everyone recognises that was done in a really, really positive way. It was really unfortunate for all the members of staff that worked at Flybe to come to such a sudden end, but it doesn't eradicate all the great work. You know, I'm looking to the left of my screen here and seeing Simon, you know, so, you know, Simon's one of them. They're all great people, but the people that we work with from umpteen management teams that went through Flybe over the years that Simon worked with personally, they were all fantastic. So we will find the right solution, and Carpet Right are very understanding of it. We're doing all we can to get the best for them and the best for Flybe.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
All right, guys. Well, picking up, I mean, the regular sort of format of the Grecian Groups meetings is to have a trawl around the boardrooms and get feedback from there, which effectively we've kind of done in this respect. Of course, if there is anything, then directors, please wave and come in. Then the second half effectively is an opportunity for the groups to feedback to us and all the other groups with any news and any pleas for assistance, for example. So you know, that there's an opportunity here, if there's anything to be added to what's already been raised this evening, to do so. I mean, I will, like Nick, just do a quick name check round the meeting, just in case. If anything springs to mind that you want to raise, then please do so. So I got Simon first on my list. Anything from you from Supporters Club, Simon?
No, we're very quiet at the moment. We've not had the last couple of meetings, so because of everything going on. So
appreciate that is difficult. There's probably not a lot going on because of where we are.
Yeah.
Of course. But yeah. Anyway, Elaine, you're next on my sort of round.
Okay, so Grecian groups. Grecian goal. Some people have paid up for the season, so we'll have about £3,000, I think, that we'll be able to give to the club for whatever they need to do. So that's great, including a couple of season tickets bought by our friends in El Paso for our use, which is fantastic. That's it. Thanks.
Richard, how about you?
We've had a couple of meetings through Zoom with the ambassadors, but there's nothing really to report. We're just looking forward to the playoffs and start of next season.
Yeah, understand that, Richard. Yeah, so like a lot of us. Gareth, Easter and Grecians, how about anything from that?
All very quiet. I think, as I said before, there'll be some expectation of what might come out from this sesh tonight. Probably, not being clearly, there's a lot going on, and there probably is not a lot to say. But I'm thinking, is it good for the video to go out? Maybe, maybe not. They can see for reality. For the group itself, we're probably on lockdown, and we sort of cancelled all our fundraising and meetings and stuff like that. And we probably just waiting for more news about the club, and then looking forward to watching some games somehow, really.
That's well, I think about it, perhaps one from me. I don't know when it comes to just in this one. Has any thought been given to are we too early yet about the broadcast of games? I guess Sky take it out of in general. They'll be broadcast on Sky. Just wondering if there's a big push for iFollow for those games. If we're playing in the playoff match, do we try and promote iFollow to as many of our fans watching as possible who don't necessarily have access to Sky?
I would think. Just you want to take that one? Is anybody here, Justin? Then
not here, Justin.
I mean, you back with us? Yeah, got you now. Yeah, go ahead, Justin. No, I think I know the answer, so I'll answer for him. I would be very surprised if Sky give anything up to iFollow. It's Sky's contract. They've got that contract. I know that a massive amount of them work. My other sins that when you're the reserve, and I did after this, I got completely stitched up. You actually also sit on the commercial board, and that's been a real roller coaster with all going on with Sky. So I'm party to the fact that they've been absolutely flat out looking at all the different scenarios of where they might go with iFollow. And that does actually follow into next season, because that's a different ball game altogether. The games that Sky aren't running, then iFollow is probably. I'm hoping that it'll be a saviour for us to some degree, because we haven't got people inside the stadium. And I know there are a number of chairmen that are massively. I think the numbers are going to be much bigger than others. So of course, the proof is in the pudding eventually. But in terms of the playoffs and in terms of any final, should we be in it, then I would be very surprised if Sky give anything up to iFollow.
Okay, thank you. That's all I thought about it there. Phil, you're next on my list.
Well, we were lucky to sneak in with the senior Reds for a meeting with Piers Sweeney and Archie Collins just before the lockdown, and then the shutdown came. We provided Matt Taylor via Jamie Vittles with the dates of birth for every senior Red who'd got a birthday in March. We've carried it on for April and for May. And I think without exception, Matt has rung every member of the senior Reds who's got a birthday on their birthday to have a chat and to wish them well. And I know from speaking to a lot of these people, that's been really well received. And it's a big plus for not just him, but for the club. And again, since the lockdown started, we've been producing a weekly set of notes, which we started off calling a newsletter, downgraded to a bulletin. And it's just various notes and quiz, and it's trying to provoke memories. The aim is to keep the group together, as a senior aides together, and to get feedback. And we've now got people putting in memories, be it former players, supporters, and I'm always looking for more involvement from members for that. So that seems to be going okay at the moment, and we're going to continue with that for the foreseeable future.
Thank you, Phil. Miss Woolsard never rang me on my birthday. Never mind. Clive, how about yourself?
Yeah, Junior Grecians, well, we continue to try and interact with them through our own social media and in conjunction with Scott, the club's social media, the best we can. Membership is at 550. We expect that to be hit, obviously, with the close down in football and what we can actually provide. What we've done is we've issued everybody with 6 months free membership, extended all the memberships for 6 months, in the hope that in 6 months' time we'll be back at the park and people will then be able to renew for something, you know, they'll get value for. The only other thing really is that the family fun day that was planned is obviously going to be cancelled. It's not till July, but we're not going to make that, I don't think. So we'll be cancelling that. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Clive. Chris, how about things from Bristol and surrounding area?
There's been contact through our email group, but we haven't had any meetings as such for quite a while now. Yeah, I'd say this meeting on here has been quite successful, so maybe this is a way we'll get tie us over for a while.
It is helpful. It has added things. You know, we've all learned things, I think, from the technology front through this, which could well help us in the future. So yeah, there's one good thing to come out of it on the plus columns anyway. Last but not least, Spike, you're my bottom right. Have you got anything you would like to add in, ask or feedback?
No, the only thing is how good the social media team have done and how much is appreciated by everyone, especially the ones that sometimes live a bit further away and don't get the local news straight away and rely on the internet, and how good it's actually been motivation-wise. That's the big thing everyone seems to have loved at the moment. With lockdown, you actually got positive things coming out at a negative time.
Yeah, I'd echo that, Spike. It's been great watching, you know, the full versions of some of those past matches. It's been nice to sit down rather than the highlights. It's actually nice to immerse yourself in the full 90 or 120 and penalties or whatever it is. So yes, I echo what they've put out in general. It's been excellent. And I speak to my mates up in Bristol, funnily enough, the Rovers lads, and I think we knocked them into a cocked hat. Quite frankly, they love what we do down here. They admire it from afar and moan about the lack of a similar situation at their club. So yeah, we should consider ourselves fortunate to be ahead of a League One club in that respect.
Andy, the downside to that is the DVDs are all over your desk, because I was taking out the selective ones of the good games. So there is a little bit of mess in the office, I'm afraid.
Well, I'll pop in 6 months' time and clear it up then, Justin, if you like. Right, guys. Nick, and unless there's anything else that people want to bring up, I propose we say thank you very much to everybody for attending, and we'll bail over tonight's proceedings. Is that in order, everybody?
Yep.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah. Well done, everybody.
Just thank you all for coming, and thank you, Justin and Julian especially. Just taking up Gareth's point about releasing this to video, and that was always the intention. But does anybody else have any concerns about that?
No.
My only concern is the quality, to be quite honest. There's been a lot of interference on voices, and I'm not sure that's going to come out very well. But
I know
do the best that you can with it.
I know Simon
obviously
Scott.
I'm never keen on things like that.
Oh,
I know that Simon and Scott have become dab hands at editing these things, so I'm sure they'll let us know if it's of a quality that doesn't work for them.
I think we should, I don't think there's anything there, and I think Gareth's line, while he's exercising caution, actually does show that there's an awful lot going on. So I'm very comfortable with it, but up to you in the end. And I'm sure you and the social boys will look at it, and if there is anything that's going to give us will be up before the beak for, I'm sure you'll cut it out, or perhaps not. Who knows?
Okay. Is there a timeline in terms of when it might be out by?
I shan't be sending it on until tomorrow because I imagine it's going to be quite a big file.
Yeah.
So I haven't quite thought that bit through, if I'm completely honest. But so it at the earliest it's going to be late tomorrow, but I would imagine the next day.
Oh, a couple of days, 2 days.
Yeah, I'll ask them to load it up. I'll ask them to not do it tomorrow, but to release it on Thursday.
Nick, I recorded the CCT meeting this afternoon and it took me 45 minutes to convert it. So good luck tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, thank you all ever so much, everybody. I really appreciate you rocking up.
Okay,
thanks everybody.
Bye.
See you all.
Well,